Hi, everybody. Good to see some regulars here and a lot of new folks. That's wonderful. Great to be with you. To introduce myself a little bit, so I've been with O'Donnell Learn for about 9 months now. And before that, 25 years experience in higher education. And I came up through the faculty ranks. I dabbled in faculty development at the campus level, but then soon became a full-time director for the Center for Teaching and Learning at Sonoma State University, so in the Bay Area, California. And then came to doing that for our Cal State system, 23 campuses for about 10 years. And then retired out of that role, and I'm excited to come to O'Donnell Learn and take much of what I've done there and apply it with a great team and great leadership here. And so today we're going to talk to you about some of the things we're doing to help innovate learning. Carrie?
Hi, thanks, Brett. Brett and I are partners in crime. And anyway, I think some of you have seen us in our little virtual road show. Anyway, I'm Carrie O'Donnell, founder of O'Donnell Learn, which I founded back in 1990 when I was in my 20s. We worked with publishers, content companies, ed tech companies for a long time, and we turned our lens laser focused right onto higher ed institutions about 10 years ago and have not looked back. We love supporting great learning in higher education institutions. We have about 150 professionals in learning design on our team, including full-time and freelance. We're always looking for great freelancers, by the way. Go on our website, sign up. And they're all trained in our O'Donnell way of doing things. But Brett and I have been really passionate together about creating great learning and making effective learning, and especially in today's really, anxious, virtual, blended, et cetera, environment. So today we're going to talk about learning while doing and how to support faculty to innovate their course real time. And I'm going to, Brett, you want to talk a little bit about the objectives, and then I'll get started on the research.
Sure. Yeah, so we're looking for opportunities today to really think about how, whether you're a center director for faculty development, you're an instructional designer, you're faculty, you're a chair, how can you better connect to the needs that you have within your courses and for meeting students' needs? And then how can you do that in a way where you can identify those needs, but have experiences, training, what have you, or programs that help things stick? So that if you're covering a particular topic, it's not a one-off and then people disperse and then we see that efforts don't necessarily go forward and they don't stick. So today we're going to kind of focus on some of that stickiness and that intentionality. And we'll talk about learn by doing, real-time opportunities, and how you can roll those forward.
Yeah, and today more than usual, we're going to talk a little bit about the services that we're creating at O'Donnell, because we think that we have a huge amount of research that shows that this is what institutions are looking for. And we believe that we're here to support institutions, but we want you to use our ideas, techniques without us, with or without us, anytime as you see fit. So I'm going to start by just a little bit. So O'Donnell does a lot of market research as well for clients, and we've done hundreds and hundreds of studies in higher education in the last 25 years. And but we also turn that lens on ourselves and always do a little bit of research. So if you were at our last webinar, bear with me, because two of the slides I'm going to show are a repeat, but I'm going to take them into a different direction. So you'll see. So we did a big study this summer on faculty on how they design and develop course, how they view the creation of course, et cetera. And so the first thing we asked them how do they approach teaching online courses or teaching a course with a digital component or a blended course. And if you look at the slide, the bar graph on the left, you'll see that almost 50%, 49% mirror their face-to-face course, where we gave them a slider, and on the left is mirror the face-to-face, on the right is designed differently for online. And only 22% designed differently for online. Then we also asked them, how long have you been teaching online? This survey was done to 450 faculty in August. And if you look on the pie on the right, you'll see that 42% have not taught online or taught 1 to 2 terms online. So you have a group that haven't taught that much online and mirror their face-to-face course, which is a typical first step to going online. When people first start to go online, they mirror their face-to-face course. And then as you teach, you realize that you need to really change things to be more effective online. And so you've got a little less sophisticated half of the people, yet nearly all of the participants, when asked how confident they are in their teaching online, gave it a 6 on a scale of 1 to 7. So people are very confident. So there's a little bit of a mismatch there. And what we focus a lot on is how to support faculty to help them iterate, to be more sophisticated online, and help them do what they do best face-to-face and bring it into an online environment. So the next one is, the next slide is, we asked them how long they spent creating a course. And this was fascinating to me. For the prepping a first-time course in the term before the summer, for example, people on average spend 49 hours. And to prepare for a existing course is 23 hours. But here's the interesting thing. Faculty, we asked them very specifically, how much time do you dedicate to creating assessments, lectures, student activities, and preparing your course for each week? And faculty told us 8 hours. So that was very interesting to us, because that's an awful lot of time working on a course. And our goal is to help your faculty make that time more efficient and more effective. So we also asked them, what steps do you take prior to the start of a term? So we had done a bunch of faculty focus groups and gotten people to describe how they prepare for the course, how they teach, what do they do, what do they work on, et cetera. So we used the list from the focus groups. And this was asked for, let's say you've taken a course, you've already taught a course once, so this is not a new course, but we asked, what steps do you take prior to start of term? And if you look, this is the percentage of people who take each step. None of this is a huge surprise, except for that when you look at it, you see that there's an awful lot of things that most people do before they even get started in the course. They work on their homework assignments or lectures, their grading strategy, their student materials, active learning. That's a lot to do before they start. And then we ask them, what do you modify midterm when you teach a course? And you can see that over 60% of people say they add or eliminate content, they create or modify assessments, review their lectures, redo their lectures, re-record them if it's asynchronous, and then they also work on homework assignments. So this is an awful lot of work. And I'm sure that nobody here is hugely surprised by it, but when you think about it, what we're trying to think about is how to help faculty with that 8 hours, how to help faculty continually iterate and reiterate their course to create a better experience for their students. So we're gonna stop for a moment, like we always do, and ask you, we're gonna take you out to a Padlet, and Molly, I'm sure you probably already put it in chat, but we wanna know, how do you know what faculty need in terms of enhancing their courses? Like, how do you know what and when they need it? Like, how do you kind of determine that? And what steps do you take with faculty to develop or implement a course enhancement plan? So we'd like you to focus on 1A and 1B on this here. And then after the end of this, so towards the end of the webinar, we'll come back and revisit with the other questions. So take a moment and go for it.
If you are faculty, how do you do a check-in, and then how might you make your needs known? You could always add to your
exactly.
box there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take that 100% from faculty administrator or support person.
I need some more support. Okay, great. And then how can you target that? Absolutely. You can always use more support.
And I do not know how to get support. This is something that came up an awful lot, even though schools have websites here or there. It's very it's very it's disaggregated. And the other thing about not knowing where to get support and how to get support, so we have to remember that most institutions, on average, there are 20,000 instructional designers to support 1.5 million faculty members across the country. So that's a bit of a difficulty as well.
I'm looking from an instructional designer perspective, so checking their courses in the LMS before publishing them, great. So we'll think about what your strategies are. How are you checking that against what? What are the main items that you're looking for? How might you give them then suggestions or exemplars, techniques? Great, checking against rubrics. Nice. Yes, common is to have an advisory committee for your Center for Teaching. And then that advisory committee is often school-based representatives. And so then they'll branch out and communicate to the schools and then bring information back into the center, if you will. And then some decisions can be made that way. Hopefully that's an effective networking that takes place, that there is good informed dialogue taking places at the different units.
By the way, we're really trying hard to help institutions be able to support you so we don't get I don't knows. I mean, it's hard because there's a lot that needs to be learned, and it's a continual learning process and for faculty, and that's a struggle. Yeah.
Building relationships, absolutely. Consultation opportunities.
It's great.
Looking at the light bulb joke here.
Me too. Obviously, we're looking at that at the same time, Brett.
You have to be open to change, and you have to see the need for change, and the change has to be inviting and not threatening. So there are definitely ways to, sort of nuance and invite that change and make it not threatening and make it incremental. And so we'll talk about some of those experiences, I think, today that'll help out with that.
Yeah, definitely. Our whole theory is that you only change a few things at once. You don't try to wholesale change your whole course, because it'll be frustrating.
Given that we have people in columns 2A and 2B, let's probably
time to move on.
Back to
move back.
Yeah. All right. And bear with me, I'll go to full screen here. Okay. So let's talk about helping faculty learn while doing. And so we definitely saw some of those needs come up in the Padlet. That's great. And from different perspectives as well. So some of the typical models that some of you are either leading, experiencing, or supporting would be things like seminars. So a center director would, as early as spring, be looking at what to offer in fall as far as these seminars. They might set up a calendar of topics they think that are important, of interest, or connected to some campus initiatives, let's say. And you can do that, and you can try and predict what'll be of interest and what'll be useful, but you don't necessarily know, okay, who's going to show up at any given time, and then what are they going to do with that going forward? So those are great activities, but again, it can be a very sort of short-term experience as far as who's showing up in that window of time and then what they actually do with it going forward. And then different from that, you might do an intensive boot camp. These happen often during summer when faculty are off calendar and have the time. Maybe during winter break, but that's where you do this really intensive deep dive on maybe a series of topics, and you're trying to cover as much as you can over a number of days. There are advantages of that because you will cover a lot, but it can sometimes be overload. And so we'll talk about some strategies for making sure that you're still doing that in a way that is purposeful and modularized, and people can do things with it going forward. You might prop up showcases of great things that people are doing. This could be related to teaching, but it could also, of course, be research or service, but we'll focus on teaching aspects today. You might use your website as a center to have some how-to resources that could be printouts, could be web pages, could even be recordings, screen captures. You might have an FAQ section or some guides. So those are different types of models for providing support.
I wanted to mention one other thing, Brett.
Yeah.
If any of you have a really great resource that you use, that you like, that your campus throw it in the chat because I know that people like to look. We love to look and see what other people are doing, and I know other people do too.
Yeah, there's some great websites out there with really well-developed resources out there. You know, I'm thinking of one recently on this inclusivity toolkit that just came up in the last week that's fabulous that a lot of people are talking about. So that's a good example. Okay. So what we know in looking at the research, though, is with many of these experiences, you get people into the room. That's wonderful. You might have 20, 30 people show up for this seminar. You have a great topic, you have a great speaker, but you know, within days, you can see how much the retention from that session may drop off if you just count on that 1 hour time of capture, and then for people to go back to their roles and become overwhelmed again in all the different things that they do and not necessarily stay focused and be implementing what they've learned. So you'll see that drop off down to about 30% within a week. And of course, within a month, you can see that down to about 13% retention. So if you're offering something as a boot camp and you do that in June because faculty are still kind of, their heads are in the role, the university and their positions, and then you let them go for July and August because they need that time and space, you can think about over that 6 weeks or so, what might happen to the retention of what they've learned back in June in one of those boot camps. So you kind of need to think about how you can make it something that sticks further with them and how you can use strategies for that. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. And so what we do is we have methods for having these presentations. There's certainly nothing wrong with doing a seminar or a workshop or a presentation, but then how might you follow up with that in the first few days to have some sort of communication taking place? Maybe it's a follow-up email that has a handout or a related tip or trick. Maybe it's getting them into a discussion board. Maybe it's using a Slack channel. Any of those things just to kind of keep it present in their mind and do a follow-up tickler. And then how do you work with faculty within a few days to give them some sort of checklist where they can develop something that's a customized plan, an easy to do sort of 1, 2, 3 type thing. And we'll give you a model in just a moment as an example, but that'll again keep them thinking, and it'll also allow them to take what they experienced in a group setting and now provide something that's more personalized for them. And then how can you take that and have them come to you as an instructional designer or a faculty associate, let's say, for your center, and then actually discuss that plan and what the next steps would be. What are the best resources? What are the best changes to make to their course? What might they do in the learning management system or to their objectives or selecting a different type of material? So those are the different things that we'll talk about today to make this more hands-on, active, collaborative, and then also talking about the one-on-one support that can lead from that. So how do you create purposeful learning while doing? So we'll add that spin onto it. And some of you know about purposeful learning, what we've been talking about through some of our webinars. We use that often as a framework. And you can see the words that come up here in the cloud, but I'll show you the elements. But really the way these stand out is this is really learner-centric. This is really about making it to the learning outcomes and the needs of the learners, and then how they're going to apply things, making it active and authentic, for example, humanizing it, getting them engaged, having them collaborate. So how do you do that? We apply this framework that we have that has these 8 elements. And so on the left, you're going to see some of these that are more about teaching practices, about good design, and in some ways about delivery as well. But on the right side, you're going to see these really critical, more humanized elements that we emphasize through the process. And that's one thing that I see with our framework compared to some of the others that I'm very familiar with, is it does have that very heavy student-centric facilitation, community, humanizing aspects to it, and very heavy on equity and inclusion. So we use this framework, and within this framework of these 8 elements, we actually have 30 objectives across these 8 elements, and we can use those as check-ins. And so we have this purposeful learning check that we give to instructors. And this is a screenshot just showing you the beginning of it and then showing you the first section and those respective elements. And so an instructor can actually go to the online version that we have of this, which we'll share in a follow-up, and they can do a check of their course. They can just select one course, review the objectives, and then literally look at their course, think about their course, and how they might be meeting those objectives. So this is just a mock-up, and I'm showing you section 2 on outcomes aligned assessment. These are examples of what an instructor might check off, but we also want them to reflect and put in some information. We've got some qualitative data now. This can be for their own purpose, but again, ideally meeting with a learning designer or a faculty associate to say, okay, these are some areas that are working really well. I feel strong here. These are areas where I feel like I really need help. And then these are the ways that I've reflected. Let's make a plan together. So what we developed off of this check is at the bottom of that 2-page check across those 8 sections is the instructor comes away with this course enhancement plan. And these are just 3 simple capture points. It's not extensive. They're just trying to take this as something that they want to move forward with as their 3 most critical objectives or areas for emphasis. So here you can see courses community, you can see learning outcomes and assessment and alignment, and then you can see engagement opportunities as well. So then what they can do is take that course enhancement plan and they can work with the learning designer to actually come up with ways where they'll make changes to their course. So this is just looking at that first objective or area of enhancement is course as community. So some things that can come from a learning designer as well, there's this great learner connectedness survey that you can use at the outset of your course to learn about your students, to learn about their name, identity, their situational factors, their goals, their aspirations, ways they feel like they're strong learners, ways they struggle as learners, and how you can have that information at your disposal and how you can connect with them more individually, but also collectively. We also model how to have an effective homepage for your course in your learning management system. And then we also work with instructors to create a welcome video. It could be that welcome video that's just you presenting yourself to the students and talking about the course a little bit, and then linking them to the learning management system. Or it could be something like using Flipgrid, where you've given your introductory video, but then you've prompted students to then share about themselves across that Flipgrid for the whole group. So then we have those takeaway steps there that the instructors can use for those 3 enhancement areas. And this is something that they can continue to iterate with and can move on beyond that. So those are ways that we've tried to make it something that's gone from, let's say, a workshop type experience to then being something that's a self-check that's individualized to then working with some follow-up support and then making steps and putting that plan into action. So if we look at some compatible models of professional development, one that we use quite a bit is our Jumpstart Bootcamp. And with that, we really emphasize that learning while doing aspect. We do a combination of synchronous sessions, we do asynchronous sessions, and we also do real-time support with learning designers. So in these live sessions, we've got everything aligned with our purposeful learning framework. We have everything chunked or sequenced into bite-sized topics. We actually have 15 modules. So we like to present those into, let's say, 30-minute sessions. And within those 30-minute sessions, we have a particular amount of content, let's say 10 to 15 minutes, but then we make sure that we have some interaction, some hands-on active learning, and then we have some takeaway steps from there. So these live sessions will then lead to steps that they'll do individually. You might see that as flipped learning because then they have a task before the next session, but they also have things that they do with the learning designer where they're going to get real-time hands-on support by somebody who's really focused and dedicated and experienced with that. We model the best practices for active learning. It's not about just presenting content to them in theory. It's really about putting them through the process of what we're modeling. And then we have a wealth of resources that we make available that they're able to adapt or adopt for their courses and fit it to their learning objectives, fit it to their content domain, whatever it may be. And then again, we have that individualized course enhancement plan that gets them going down the path. So those are ways we do it through our Jumpstart Bootcamp. Carrie? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would just add one thing from what Brett was saying, that, you know, like whether to take what the takeaway from us, if you were doing this yourself without us, is this combination of the threefold combination of formal training and modeling in engaged learning, active learning, and then the one-on-one. And it doesn't have to be extreme one-on-one support. It could be just an hour of just sitting down with a designer. So you can talk, as a faculty member, you can talk through what your thoughts are, how you want to enhance your course. get some ideas. Our designers will also shoot you exemplars or some tools that you might use. And it's just great for that 3-part is what gets away from the formal training and makes it an engaged, active, learn while doing that carries on.
Yeah, and by going through the process in such a way, they also become a community of learners. So you're modeling it with them, but you're also creating that community of learners. And then this is something that often will continue beyond the formal program. They'll make connections that continue on, or that you can then use them as resources in further programs. If you're doing another version of this, another cycle of this, you can pull in faculty who have had a good experience and made good changes to their courses and get them involved as peer facilitators. A couple of the focused and functional resources that we give as examples is we have, if we're focusing on effective learning outcomes, there's more context to it than this in this screenshot, but we really work with instructors to make sure that their learning outcomes are SMART, and you can see the acronym for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. There are variations of that out there, but we really want to make sure that they're thinking through their learning outcomes before starting their course, and ideally they've developed these strong outcomes. They're looking at weaker examples and stronger examples, refining those, and then engaging in backward design, which is another thing that we model with them. We have an enhanced syllabus checklist. Still find to this day that most course syllabi are just sort of a formality. They don't carry a lot of weight and they don't engage students. So we work with them to make it more effective content-wise, but also we work with them to provide or create models that are more engaging, visually engaging syllabi. You might have seen Michelle Pacansky's Brock on the liquid syllabus. That's kind of taking it to the extreme in a great way, but we want to just nudge them along to the next level of creating an engaging syllabus that speaks to the learner and really gets them excited about the path that they're getting onto. So a couple sample resources. Another example is a Lunch and Learn series that we know that St. Francis College, or a college that we've worked with, is now implementing that based on having the Jumpstart experience that we had with them and doing that boot camp. They now have a Lunch and Learn program that they've implemented. They now have a core of faculty that are excited about these things. They have what they've termed as FOMO, fear of missing out, from the other faculty. They now want to be engaged in this type of experience. So they've got this momentum and they're using a Lunch and Learn type of process where they have these bite-sized topics. Maybe it's a particular course element. They have a demonstration or showcase of that, and there's peer learning and sharing that takes place. Again, it's not pulling in an article or pulling in an external resource, but it's really about grounding it into your community of practice. And then how can people take that tool or resource and adapt or adopt that readily, just in time, real time. And then doing any clarifying or understanding of how you'd be using that for particular course modalities or disciplines. And then they come out with an action plan. What is their next step based on the topic of that Lunch and Learn? So again, it's very bite-sized and actionable. And I'll turn it over to Carrie for a while. She'll start off with microlearning.
I'm going to talk a little bit about microlearning. We have our head of product innovation spent several years building platforms for workplace learning, and has helped our team to think a lot about microlearning and how today's worker is really looking for learning that's in context and where they can collaborate and communicate with other people, but it's bite-sized. It has to do with what I'm looking for today. So I'm really looking to better engage my students with something that I can do in a live synchronous session. And that kind of thing can start a question and create a microlearning opportunity to find different ways to engage students and then try out different techniques. And typically you learn it, then you try it. Hopefully there's targeted tools and exemplars to go along with it. We practice what we preach on our team, and Brett runs a microlearning community for our learning designers, where you might bring up a problem that we've encountered, that one of our designers has encountered, and then the team discusses it, and then they share best practices, and that's a really great way for today's learning. So we're developing, to the next slide, we're developing a whole platform. Oh, actually, I wanted to show you before that. Brett, I'd like to share my
Yep.
own screen for a minute.
You
I want
got
to
it.
take you into, I forgot about this. So I'm going to take you. Okay. Can you see my screen now? Am I sharing
Got
it?
it. Yes.
Okay. So we create, we're building this platform called Nectar that some of you may be familiar with to help faculty. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that afterward. But the first thing we built was we built a learning piece of it, for a professional development piece. And what we do is we use it for our internal team, and we also use it externally at our boot camp, Jumpstart boot camps with our partner institutions. And so it allows you to create this micro learning. And and by the way, you don't have to use our platform. I'm just showing this to you so you can see how we think about micro learning. But the first thing we've got on this is a little 3-module thing, and it's also we use it externally as an intro to O'Donnell Learn. And I just want to show you this and give you access to this if you'd like it. But we have intros. So we have like on top are all your announcements and ways you can communicate with people. And then I'm going to just take you into one of the modules. So this is a purposeful learning framework module, and it's it has in it, and this is the type of things we'd house in a micro learning experience. So it's a brief 3-minute video that's an overview of purposeful learning, why, how, and what it is. And then there's an article on why people are at the center of everything we do and our guiding principles around people. Then there's a case study so you can see how purposeful learning works in action. And then we have an intro with some instructions to our purposeful learning check that we just show you. And by the way, that's a free and open tool that anyone at any institution or anywhere can use to evaluate their learning. So it's there for you. And on the slide is a link on how to get into it. And then what we also include in this particular module are some tools for creating community in the class, because we find that something people really love, some of their most favorite tools of ours. So there's the enhanced syllabus checklist, the learner connectedness survey. Brett talked about both of those, an early term feedback survey where you can actually get feedback from your students on how the course is going, how the term is going. And there's a really great empathy mapping activity that we use. We also threw in a webinar that Brett and I gave on diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Pennsylvania Mid-Atlantic Area Distance Learning Association. So back to the slides, just wanted to show that to you and give that to you. And that's a tool for you to use at your convenience and when you want to. Here's a register here. Molly can put that in the chat maybe. And then also we'll have it, Brett, I'll stop sharing and give it back to you. We will also have, so that's there for you. And we'd love your feedback if you do take a look at it. So then we just wanted to talk a minute about Nectar, which is our platform that we're creating. And it's really interesting because not only are we creating this platform, but we're doing a tremendous amount of research for it. And we've built a design panel of 80 participants that are half faculty and half administrators and or instructional designers, instructional technologists, support. We haven't 100% closed the panel. So if people are interested, please contact us. We are looking for more participants who would really like to help us to really figure out how to create Nectar so that it can be a tool, an affordable, accessible tool for every campus to use to build community and to build resources and learning and micro learning around designing great learning and iterating continually for faculty and learning while doing. So it's got 3 components: learn, design, and discover, and micro learning modules. We have these tools and templates. We share them with you a lot in these webinars. As you come to more of them, you'll see we always share something at our webinars. And but the key that was really interesting and that we're finding that our design panel really wants is to build a community. They want to build a community around learning. They want facilitated collaboration for the institution so that the institution can share ideas, resources, showcases, and templates. And we want to facilitate that for you. And this research that Brett just put up there is research we just did with our design panel. We asked them how important, what's the appeal and of different elements of the platform. And this is the percentage of respondents who said that each was either extremely or very appealing. So top two. So you can see the majority want all of the different elements, but collaboration, one-on-one support for faculty and community are the most. If you have any thoughts on any of that, please just drop it into chat, and I will. That's our last. So Nectar's not out there yet, but we're building it now. We're going to be launching it later this year. So pause for a moment, and we'd like to come back to our Padlet. And I'm hoping we gave you some food for thought here, and that you've got some, what are some of the ideas here that resonate with you, others that you can do that have worked for you. And then also, I would love to hear what your call to action is after today. Like, what are you going to walk away and do next? We won't hold you to it, or maybe we will. So let's go back to the Padlet. Yeah, I really like the comment that's right up there, which is modify as needed. Don't wait a year until the end of the semester if something isn't working. And this is kind of our mantra. And we're hoping that Nectar and that our support services will help people to do that, but that we can help you to design your own support services as well to help do that. But if faculty know that there's somewhere they can go, if they know where they can turn and they know they want to do something different, we want to make it easy and efficient, and more efficient than trying to scramble around. Nobody wants to look at a blank piece of paper to try to figure something out.
I see the comment in 2A, all of our workshops are designed around a rationale for practicing. Any examples that you want to share within there? You can add that to the box, add in chat, whichever's easier for you. I'm just curious about the types of rationale.
And by the way, if you want to use our methodology, our purposeful learning framework, it's open, and love to have you use it. One thing we would love is if you do use it, give us feedback. Tell us what works, what doesn't, where you think it could be enhanced, where you think we're overstepping on one element of the course. It's always a balance. We try to balance really hard to balance the pedagogical aspects of the course with the human, learner-centered, inclusive parts of the course.
And it's really a framework that's set up to be supportive, formative, and iterative. It's not an evaluative process or cycle. So we have it set up for that. It's not like some of the rubrics that are out there that are more for formal course review and evaluation. It does cover many of the same standards, but goes beyond in certain areas that are really about the student experience. Yeah.
Back to our question about the design around a rationale for change. It's interesting. One of our one of my muses is a woman named Julie Schell, who worked with Eric Mazur for many years, and they're real experts on peer instruction. And so I can totally see what you're doing about creating a workshop around peer instruction in STEM. Now can use that to create better engagement in the classroom. So that I can totally visualize what you're doing. Yeah. Yeah, and human-centered for us is both instructor and student equally. Everyone in the class is a human, and they all have, what have we learned in the last year, if we've learned nothing else, is that we all have anxieties, and we have to work, and complexities and challenges. And I mean, horrible challenges like food insecurity or mental health increased challenges. So we need to really be human-centered. I think we're formative evaluation during the course and summative at the end. That's a very great. We work a lot. We have a whole module on effective assessment. It's really all about increasing the use of formative, and we really focus on that.
Yeah, a lot of reasons for that. I mean, giving timely feedback to students, having multiple forms of assessment, not having high stakes assessment, therefore having less pressure and cheating instances and things like that. So giving students more opportunities and more pathways to meeting the outcomes.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's time to, let's go back to the slides and wrap it. Everyone's busy. Brett, take it away, my friend.
All right. Yeah, we're just wrapping up the session here. What we will do is follow up, sending you some of the information and resources that you saw today. So slides, recording, the Purposeful Learning Overview module link, and invite into that. The Purposeful Learning Check instrument, if you will. I think that's a little bit strong of a word, resource. And then the Padlet, if there were some resources in there that were of interest from your colleagues. And
by the way, that takeaway box makes me think, wow, I'm getting hungry. Might be time for lunch. Sorry.
That's true. I'm West Coast, so I'm not thinking that way, but for most of you, absolutely.
By the way, one comment on our Purposeful Learning framework and the check is that Brett has done a really good job of, it's very really aligned. I mean, a lot of what we do comes out of Brett's work, where he developed COLT, a really gold standard quality rubric that's used extensively at Cal State. And but our work aligns very well with Quality Matters and complements some of the rubrics that are out there with this huge focus on humanizing the course. So back to Brett.
Gary. Back to, yeah, we're closing here. So if you have any contact you want to do, you've got our information there on the slide. But again, we'll reach out to you based on the registration list and follow up with resources.